when I looked at my life, yes, the excitement and the experiences, but now I have the gift of collecting all of those and sharing them and making sense out of them. It's, recollect and sharing it with whether it's your children, your grandchildren, but even your neighbors. So I think it's a very special place to be as a grown-up adult. Even a grown-up adult without children or grandchildren can still give that wisdom back.
That was Lidia Bastianich. For those who follow Italian cooking on public television, Lidia is likely a household name. She's won countless awards, including an Emmy as a television host and several James Beard Awards. As a best-selling cookbook author, Lidia is also a celebrated restaurateur, including Becco in New York City, Lidia's in Kansas City, and she's a partner in Eataly with numerous locations in the U.S. and in Brazil. Lidia's story as an immigrant, entrepreneur, and Italian food connoisseur is an inspiration continuing to unfold. In this Squeeze the Day, let's learn about her life experiences and how they continue to flavor our world.
I'm Sally Hussey, the CEO of 50 Forward, and we're glad you joined us to hear inspiring stories from older adults. Their words of wisdom are well worth sharing as we seek to navigate a meaningful and purpose-driven second chapter in our life. This podcast is made possible through the work of 50 Forward and our mission to support, champion, and enhance the lives of those 50 and older.
Today's Squeeze the Day is brought to you by the All of Us Research Program from the National Institutes of Health. Learn how you can help change the future of health by participating in the program. Visit www.joinallofus.org to learn more. I'm Susan Sizemore, Communications Director of 50 Forward. So let's get started. Hi, Lidia. Welcome.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for having me on.
Tell us a little bit about where you grew up. I know that you had to flee communism and you lived in a refugee camp for a bit, and that's just such an interesting background. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, if you look at Italy, in the right-hand side, beyond Venice going up to Trieste, there's a little peninsula called Istria. And Istria, part of Dalmatia, were part of Italy. Italy lost the war, and as part of the Paris Treaty of 1947, in the aftermath of World War II, Istria and Dalmatia and all those areas where we lived as Italians were given to the newly formed communist Yugoslavia. And I was just born on February 21st, 1947. The Paris Treaty was signed on February, I think, 24th, 1947. So I was just on the cusp of the treaty and as a child. So it was difficult because they didn't allow us to speak Italian. They didn't allow us to go to church. Communism really took a grip on the people living there. They wanted you to be what they were. And in 1956, my parents decided that maybe it was time to move on. Now, my parents, of course, did not tell me and my brother what they were planning, but we had family on the other side of the border. And so we supposedly went to visit Aunt Nina, who was not well. And 2 weeks later, my father literally escaped because he was not allowed to come with us. One had to remain as a hostage. And he escaped the border. He was shot at. The dogs were after him, but he made it. And we reunited in Trieste, now Italy. And of course, as immigrants fleeing one country without papers, we went to the police and applied for political refuge, and we became refugees. And at that point, they put us in a camp, and it was called Campo San Saba. Now it is a museum in Trieste. And we lived there for 2 years awaiting an opportunity to move on as immigrants. Who would take us in the free world? We could have stayed, I guess, in Italy, but Italy, in the aftermath of the war, my parents felt that maybe it was time to move on. And so in 1958, the United States, it was Dwight Eisenhower that was the president. He opened immigration for people fleeing communism, and we were one of the first family.
That's so fascinating. And I'm sure looking back now, I really didn't realize how young you were when you left. But do you think that experience shaped the woman you are today?
I think so. Life is an accumulation of our experiences and our reactions to them, actually. During communism, life was tough because, of course, all the restrictions of language and religion and whatever who we were, but also food was scarce. And so I think that part of my connection to food was actually we lived with my grandmother and she raised all the food that we ate. She had the courtyard animals, the goats, the pigs, and the slaughter every year, making prosciutto, making sausages. And I was part of all of that. And of course, the garden. So that was the basis of growing up with growing food and the appreciation and not all the time having a lot of it. And of course, then when we entered the camp, there was the mess hall. We had to go online for our food with a little plate. So again, the question of waiting for food and not sure that it would come. Food was always sort of a connector for me because beyond the memories that it had for me of my childhood, it actually connected me. I remember cooking the foods that my mother cooked with my grandmother, and the aromas and all of that brought me back to the special place. So, as who I am as a professional, these experience has the base of who I am and my relationship with food, and it gives me great pleasure now, I guess, to give food, to make food, to prepare food, to nurture people because I was nurtured along the way and food was offered to me along the way when there was no food for me.
Mm. Did you ever envision when you were younger being a television celebrity or a respected author? You've achieved so much.
No, no, never, never. Once we were here, the hardship that my parents went through and emotionally what they felt, I think left in me this desire says, I'm young. They did it because of mine and my brother's opportunities for education. We have to make something out of it. We got to prove them right. We got to. So I think that's what propelled me really in working hard, in studying hard, being an American and understanding really America and contributing to this country that gave us this new beginning.
I think there's so much truth to that. And I want to touch a little bit more on working and cooking with your grandmother. Is that a tradition you carry on with your children and your grandchildren?
Absolutely. I recall and I see how much part of me it is, how much warmth it brings to me, and the food that we cooked together that she taught me how to. And then ultimately, she would make my favorite food, whether it was just polenta and goat's milk and a little bit of honey that she had. She would do special things, what she could. So, absolutely, I want to continue that. I want to build those food memories for my children and then for their children, for the grandchildren. So I continue. They're always around my table and my working table too.
Always a working table in a big family. I saw it at PBS special just a few days ago and wanted to talk to you just briefly about sharing meals with loved ones and being a part of many cultures. Would you touch a little bit on that special? Because to me, there were really interesting bonds that you had with the families sharing.
Well, that's special. I have my regular cooking show once a week, but once a year for the last 13 years, I do a Lydia Celebrates America special. We co produce it with WGBH, and it is kind of my thank you to America because you see, in these years in cooking, food is the connector. And I built the trust in my viewers. I know they trust me. Food is trustful. Food is positive. And I enter with that into the different cultures. But also, I want to share with my viewers what I see in America, what I appreciate from America. It's like being in the forest, not seeing the trees. I'm in the forest, but I see the tree very clearly, what I was given as an immigrant coming to America. And so the special, specifically this year's special, was on immigrants and different ethnicities because there is such discussions over immigrants and do we want them, don't we want them, what do they mean? And I wanted to show America that, I'm an immigrant for first. And I was given this great opportunity. And I was brought here. I mean, we didn't speak English or anything. We were brought here by the Catholic charities and the Italian American community just rallied around us when finally we got a little apartment. They brought us food, bagfuls of food, knives, forks, dishes, secondhand that I couldn't use, but we welcomed it. So I am a product of Americans that cared. And yes, they were Italian Americans, but they were Americans as well. And so, in choosing these different ethnicities, which are the ethnicities now that come in as immigrants, they need the freedom. Their place of birth or whatever is not offering the freedom of religion, of speech, or whatever. And so, I wanted to go to the different ethnicities. And of course, I always enter with food. So we cooked together, we ate together, and then I got their feelings and sentiments about being welcome in America and being in America. And, it was interesting. Each one of those different ethnicities have different foods, different customs. But, the gratitude and the thankfulness of having this opportunity at a new life was in every single one of them.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And thank you for not only what you have done, but what you have shared to kind of open everyone else's eyes to the beauty of the mixed cultures and what they bring to our country. I want to talk a little bit about awards. I know that you have won many, many awards, and probably after all of your time presenting food and programming and things, you've never done that to win awards. And I know that you're about to win an achievement and be presented something from Nashville Public Television this month. I'm curious, is there one accolade that just stands out to you as being the pinnacle of achievement?
Each one of them is really very meaningful because each one of them comes from different setting, different philosophy, but it comes from basically people that appreciate what I do and that appreciate, I guess, my teaching, my stories. And so each one of them is very meaningful because I continue to connect. I mean, I haven't been in Nashville in a few years. I love Nashville. I love music. And so I think that's Nashville is very much part of the American profile, if you will, because music is almost as important as food in identifying a culture. So I'm looking forward to it, and I really appreciate this award from the Nashville Public Television Station.
That's great. Well, we will welcome you certainly with open arms, and I'm curious to know if you have a favorite Italian restaurant after you come to Nashville. We are growing by leaps and bounds by the week.
I haven't been there in a while, so I'm looking forward. Maybe you
Yeah.
can get some. But, way back, I was friends also with Mario's. He comes from the same area
Yes.
that I come from. Mario Andretti, I know you interviewed him, comes also from the same area. So the connection, a lot of the immigrants from the same place that I came, a few of them settled in Nashville, and Mario was one of my friends that did.
Very wonderful. Yes, his restaurant was great, and it's always sad when an iconic place that you revere and trust closes, but so goes the circle, I guess. I want to talk for a minute about older adults and diets. We, as 50 Forward, we serve older adults in the Middle Tennessee community, but as we age, many older adults have dietary restrictions or health concerns. Do you have advice for them so they may continue to enjoy delicious meals while prioritizing their health and well-being?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, the timing. I noticed that I changed the timing of my meal. Certainly, breakfast is very important and lunch, but also I have my dinner, if I can, around 5 so that I have time to digest, and I find that much easier on me. Used to have dinner in Italy even later, 7:38. So eating before, I think a little before is good. Also, I always loved a lot of vegetables. So a lot of vegetables, but soups. I love soups now ever more. And soups are a venue, a carrier of proteins, of cheeses, or all kinds of vegetables, legumes. And what I do, and I recommend, is making these big pots, whether it's a chicken soup with carrots and celery and shredded chicken. And then I put it in quart containers and I freeze them and I mark it. And I pulled out, or sometimes just clear soup, I pull it out and then I see which vegetable. Do I have some spinach? Do I have an egg or something? And I put it in the soup. So A soup is a great venue because also in a soup, you can put a little bit of protein. You can put in a little piece of sausage or something and you eat it. And the soup is kind of easier to ingest and digest.
Very interesting. And, even as you speak, I hear the creative in you. It's not like, here's the soup with these 5 ingredients. It's what you have on hand, and everyone is unique.
Exactly, exactly. In soups, if you have clear or if you have a vegetable soup, don't finish them off. You can always add rice to them. You put your 1 quart, put it back to boil, add a rice or add a little pasta or add some more vegetables, and you bring it to boil and you finish off cooking it. And it seems like every time you have a new meal.
I love that. How about when people have limited mobility or energy issues? Are there any practical tips or kitchen hacks that you might have to make food prep more enjoyable for them?
Absolutely, a stool or even a rolling stool, or you can do a lot of the prep right on the table and then go to the stove. Just make sure, we call it mise en place. So let's say that you have a baking sheet and on it you have your chopped onions, your chopped garlic, and everything in separate. And then you bring that to the stove and then you cook. So you don't have to stand by the stove and chop everything. Just follow the recipe, and it could be a recipe, my recipe or anybody's recipe, but it could be your own idea. Okay, today I'm going to do this. Just get it all ready, chop, put it in front of you, and then get to the stove to actually cook it.
That's so wise. That's fewer steps, but less effort for people who need to have things simplified. I have a few, what we call a speed round of questions, just some quick responses. What are 3 staples everyone should have in their kitchen to whip up a tasty meal?
Oh, well, certainly olive oil between pasta and rice for me. 3, an awful garlic. So already I have a meal here. I have some olive oil, garlic, and pasta, and spaghetti aglio olio, a little parsley, and you got. So, yeah, I think some condiments, some basic flavoring like onions or garlic. The condiments are oil or even vinegar, and then some basic carriers of flavors, whether it's pasta, rice. And I always love legumes, dry legumes. Dry legumes are inexpensive. You can keep them. You don't have to keep them in the refrigerator, and you can sort of revive them, whether it's lentils and you boil them with some carrots, or you make a soup, lentil and rice. It's never ending. So those dry legumes, whether it's dried beans, split peas, dried favas, I love those. They make a great base for a soup.
Good things to try. How about, is there a way we can enhance flavors of food to make them more appealing while staying healthy?
Yes, it's the spice and the herb route. As Italians, we use much more herbs because we're in a Mediterranean climate. But, a lot of the cultures, especially spices, usually are in the tropical belt of our earth. And hence, whether it's pepper or whether it's clove or cinnamon, all of that's in the tropical. But all of those, are intense with flavors. And using them, not only are they intense with flavor, but they're salutary. They're good for us. They're antioxidants, whether it's cinnamon, whether it's clove. And of course, the fresh herbs, as the Italians, when you have them, if you have a garden or if it's, in the summertime, or making pesto out of these fresh herbs. That's one way of preserving that. And you make a pesto, and a pesto, usually is known basil and garlic and so on. But you can make pesto just about of any ingredient. You can make pesto of broccoli. You can make pesto of spinach. And, you can freeze it, put a date on it, and then you take it out and you're ready to enhance your soup or your pasta or whatever, add that zest of flavor.
That's fabulous to talk about the different pestos. I didn't know that. The one thing that I did realize was on a recent trip to Hawaii, I had pesto made with macadamia nuts as opposed to the pine nut. But varying pesto is something I really had never thought of until that. So thank you.
Varying the nuts, in Sicily they use almond pesto. You can use walnuts. So, those Hawaiians, absolutely. You make the pesto and also the different herbs.
Yeah, very, very fun. Very good idea. So as we age, our palates change. What are some key ingredients older adults should add to their diets as they age?
I think, I like spiciness, and I find myself that I like pepperoncino ever more, a little really spicy, and the herbs and the spices, whether it's the cinnamon, clove, porcini. I do put dry porcini. I make it into a powder, and I use the powder porcini when I make a sauce for pasta or when I make a vegetable soup. I love cloves, and they're very, very good for you. Big antioxidant properties. So, a little more of those aromatics and spiciness, lemon, and all of those that will sort of stimulate your senses.
How has the love of all things Italian and the culinary cuisine impacted your life and your family?
I took it almost like a mission. And that was because I loved cooking and it brought so much joy to me and to my family. It was such a big part of me growing up. Growing food, I mean, I remember milking the goats, making ricotta from the milk, all of those things. And then ultimately preparing it, and ultimately then the reward of pleasing people with food. But here I was, I'm Italian, and those memories are very strong in me. And I wanted to keep them because the Italian culture is such a special culture. And then I became American. At 12 years old, you're old enough to really submerge yourself into a culture, language, all in all. So I have these two basic cultures which make Lydia who Lydia is. But they're two of the best cultures in the world, I feel. As far as my business is, of course, the beauty, the taste, the products, that is Italy, the flavors, and then also the offering of America, the sort of business aspect, the marketing, the promotion. I'm looking at the aspect of Lydia as a business person and my success in the business. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to sort of teach my native culture to my adaptive culture. I wanted to bring the gift that I love so much to my new home, which is America. And so I felt very committed to bring in the real Italian food that we had in Italy to the Americans. And then all kinds of doors opened for me, books, the television. I didn't know that I would have these platforms. But the more I have them, the more I get excited about, a new thing that I'm show or talk or share.
Let's talk a little bit about your memoir. Why was now a good time to write and share the pieces of your life?
My American Dream, I wrote that 2 years ago. And I have as a whole 13 cookbooks. So that's what I do is cookbooks because, again, a way of communicating, a way of leading my viewers, my American counterparts now, to where I come from, leading them to a beautiful place, I think, and flavor and all of that. And the memoir, as I started talking about where I come from and what I did and when did I come to America, people wanted to know more. And, I am so happy I did. I did it also for my children and grandchildren as a memoir for the family, but also for my viewers, my friends out there that follow me so they know Lydia better. And I'm very happy that I share that with the American public. Also in Italy, they printed it in Italian as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges that we see today with people fleeing their countries for a safer life. And I really would like to know, what would your word of advice be to those immigrants?
I want to offer them courage. I want to offer them my example. I want to show them that America is still the greatest place on earth. Yes, there's some discussions about the contemporary, the politics, the whatever about immigrants, but there's no place like America. And as an immigrant, if you come here, appreciate, welcome, dive into America, become an American, learn the language, school your children, roll up your sleeve and really work hard because you have the opportunities here to work hard. And it might not be, and I showed that in the little special that I did. If you are an engineer in your home country, maybe you can't expect to be an engineer right away here, but slowly work towards it, get into it, make a good living for you, your family, and then get back into the challenges, the opportunities that confront you, and take them. Make it happen. Just roll up your sleeve, work, and it will happen.
Great advice. So, one of the core values of our agency is building an inclusive community. And I'm just thinking, considering your background and your current outreach, how important is it to you to have an inclusive community?
I think, it reflects what America is all about. I feel comfortable. Now I'm here most of my life. I came here when I was 12. It's well beyond 50 years that I'm in America. So I'm very much an American, but I feel good. It's like all these different countries, the different ethnicities and all that. It feels good because I know that they had difficulties and they came here and made it or are making it. And what's wonderful to see is the second and third generations of these immigrants. And it certainly is evident in my community, the Italian American community, how this second and third generation of Italian Americans really built their life, educated their children, and how they give back to America. They don't forget they're part Italian, they love that, but they bring that to their being American. And I love seeing that.
So, we have a couple questions too that we ask every guest on this program. And one of the things relates to parents or an older adult and advice they might have given you that as a young person you might have thought was really silly, but now it rings true in your everyday life. Might there be something that you can share?
In retrospect, as I look at my course of life, my respect for grandma and her respect for nature, for appreciation of food. I mean, if I dropped a piece of bread on the floor, she would have me pick it up and kiss it. She said, you might not have it tomorrow. Really, really that kind of basic respect for this earth. Until this day, when I go into a field and the farmers, or even my own, I have my own little garden here, and winter's end, and you look spring, and you're tilling the soil, and you say, this brown stuff will yield beautiful tomatoes. The gift that the earth gives us, it still amazes me. It's like a miracle that this dirt will bring forth this wonderful food that we eat. And then I lived with my mother here as immigrants. We lived together because we had nobody when we came. And so the unity of the family was very important. And we stayed together. And that kept on going with my children. They lived close by with me, with great grandma. The great grandchildren also still come around. My mother is gone now 2 years, but the respect and the gratitude that she felt for this country because it gave her children, which would be my brother and I, an opportunity to really develop our life and live in a nice house and live good, from the war. And maybe my father ended up in prison because he was deemed a capitalist. And so now to the freedom. So that appreciation for people that do things for you, not to forget, to return whenever you can, So that's on, my mother. And then I look at myself. What am I different? How am I different when I was 50 and 40? I think as you grow on in age, what happens is the collection of wisdom of all of those years. And when I see families apart, grandmas that don't see their grandkids once a year, it hurts me for grandma, but it hurts me for the children too, because that wisdom that grandparents have, it's just an accumulation, and everybody has different of their life experiences. And we enter our modus operandi, should we say, our behavior in a much more relaxed and easy way. So there's a rhythm to life, in accepting life, that makes it in this hectic world really important for young people to have that come into grandma's home, on grandpa's home, and have that rhythm of love and life very tender and soft. So I think when I looked at my life, yes, the excitement and the experiences, but now I have the gift of collecting all of those and sharing them and making sense out of them and not being so rushed to gain, to do this, to do that, recollect and sharing it with, whether it's your children, your grandchildren, but even your neighbors, even with, do work with church or with children that maybe might not be lucky enough to have grandparents. So I think it's a very special place to be as a grown-up adult. And I say grandparents because I am, but even a grown-up adult without children or grandchildren can still give that wisdom back.
Mm-hmm. So I have one closing question, and that is, Lidia, what is it that you do to squeeze the day?
Well, plan my meals. I do that regularly, even a day in advance. Okay, what do I have? What am I going to cook? Whatever. Try to get as much of the day, but not hectic. Relax, whether it's reading, whether it's listening to classical music, whether it's going into nature. I love to travel, so I squeeze my life with another trip. I just love to travel. I love to go to different cultures, taste different food. It's just, I'm still learning and taking in, even though, I've accumulated a lot. It's always refreshing to learn new things and to explore. And I still test recipes, still do my books, collaborate with my daughter, my son, who are running the business now, but with my daughter, Tanya, does the books with me, does research, produces the shows. She helps me in the production. My son loves his wine, so in production of wine, I go to the winery, I taste the wine. So I'm still very much part, and I try to fit it all in.
You do a lot to squeeze the day, and I'm so excited that you joined us. Your story is so inspiring and reinforces to all of us that challenges can become opportunities. We learn so much from one another, and certainly from the experiences of those in their second chapter of life. Now we challenge everyone listening to go squeeze the day. Squeeze the Day is made possible through listeners like you. If you enjoy this podcast, please help us continue to share inspiring stories of older adults and visit 50forward.org to make a contribution. That's FIFTYFORWARD.org. Let's support, champion, and enhance the lives of older adults together.